Hi, I'm Tony. I'm an author, presenter at Sky Sports, and years ago I went to the jungle and got ill. Very ill. So this is my podcast adventure to find more energy. It's packed with biohacking, science, health tech, supplements, and some of the most well-known experts on the planet.
This is something I spent 4 months of my life doing with electrodes glued to my head so that you can do a lifetime worth of meditation.
Decide what you don't give a fuck about, which is something you don't care about.
Some of it gets quite out there.
I had some stem cells sent up to my house that I had stored, and then I injected myself with mannitol.
And we even hack hangovers.
Alcohol is poisonous. So is water and oxygen in the wrong dosage.
So that's my podcast, Zestology. Live life with energy, vitality, and motivation. And I've been very much looking forward to this podcast. I've been looking forward to it for 8 or 9 months, actually, because I have been squirreling away and working really hard on the last few months on my new book. Yes, today's podcast is an announcement podcast because my new book is out. And strap in for a world first, because the book is a fusion of the things that we talk about on this show, basically energy, biohacking, and neuro-linguistic programming. It is a unique, energizing approach to living with more vitality. And the book is called When Life is a Bit Meh, You Need Energy. Radical new ways to revitalize and recharge your life. So if you've, over the last year, I mean, we all have had it, and this is why I've written the book, to kind of tap into it. If you've been feeling a little bit low energy and unsatisfied, maybe a little bit exhausted, not all the time, but just some of the time, you are not alone. It is, you might say, a mepidemic, which is why I've written a book about meh. So it's a book all about energy, and what you will find in the book is seriously energizing supplements, cold plunges and cryotherapy, groundbreaking sleep hacks, the latest cutting-edge biohacks, ancient forgotten practices, radical wearable health tech, the latest NLP techniques, all kind of fused throughout the book, tapping on energy, meridians, deep psychological work, and lots more as well. So, this is my chance to tell you a little bit about the book on this podcast today. I thought I'd kind of read you a few little sections, or kind of not read you, but kind of paraphrase you a couple of little sections. It's been so much fun to write because the first 3 books that I wrote were 10 years ago. I think I finished the 3rd book 10 years ago. So it's been a very long time since I've written a book, and I'd forgotten the absolute pain that you have to go to when you write a book. And there's quite a difference in the way that I brought out the book as well, because the first 3 books were a book deal with Virgin Books. They got printed in 12 different languages, and I suppose you could say were moderately successful, especially in foreign languages, actually. This, well, it's slightly different now because this is published on an indie basis, which means that it's my company publishing it on Amazon and other places. And it's very exciting. You know, I've been publishing other books for other authors on an indie basis for quite some time, and thought, you know what, I really want to do it myself as well. So that's where this book has come from. And the idea is that it's a series. So when life is a bit meh, you need energy. And I'll probably bring out another one in the next year. When life is a bit meh, you need focus, and maybe one on motivation, and we'll see what else as well. Because I wanted a kind of vehicle that combines the 2 areas that I'm most interested in, and the 2 areas that I talk about on this podcast, basically. Radical biohacking solutions, radical ways of thinking about the mind with neuro-linguistic programming as well, and meshing them together. So radical new ways to revitalize and recharge your life. Just to tell you a little bit more about the book and the kind of process behind writing it, I thought when I was writing the book, you know, biohacking, you're probably signed up to all that stuff listening to this podcast. But one of the things that people kind of throw in the way of biohacking is, yeah, but where's the science? So all the way through, you'll find the groundbreaking research. That was so painful, putting the scientific research in. I mean, it must have added another 2 months to the whole edit. Finding all the scientific research, checking it through, not being a scientist by trade, and checking that it was the right research and the right study to include in the guide, all the footnotes all the way through. Combining that with my first-hand experience to tell you which techniques really work, which ones you can skip, and how you can modify them to boost your energy on any budget as well. So the idea that the methods, or the meh will completely re-energize your mind, your body, your environment, and your brain as well. Now, the first thing to say is that this is now on sale. So if you would like to buy when life is a bit meh, you need energy, you can head to Amazon and you can search for my name. You can probably just search for Meh Book and you'll find it as well, because there aren't many books with that in the title. And that was one of the reasons I wanted to call it that. I'm very excited to say that Dave Asprey, the founder of Bulletproof, father of the biohacking movement and New York Times best-selling author, gave me a quote for the front cover of the book. And he says, "Read this book now." And on the back cover, there's the expanded quote, which says, "Tony uniquely combines NLP with proven biohacking techniques to teach you to take yourself to another level. Read this book now." And I was really thrilled and quite touched that Dave wrote that quote, actually, because I emailed him. I haven't spoken to him for a little while because of the pandemic, and obviously he's a real regular on the show, but I haven't spoken to him for a while. He got straight back to me, "Tony, I'd be honoured to read the book, honoured to endorse the book," and that was very kind of him. So a lot of people know who Dave is, and I'm delighted to have him on the front cover of the book. I've got some lovely other endorsements as well from John Gray, the international best-selling author of Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, and Vex King as well, Sunday Times best-selling author of Good Vibes, Good Life. So they've also endorsed the book. So what is this book all about? Well, it is all about boosting your energy with biohacking and NLP. We start off by soaking up the energizing power of the natural world, and I'm going to focus a little bit more on that chapter and tell you a little bit more about that in a sec. We look at exercise, the new radical workouts which boost our mood, circulation, brain and body. And I'm just going to give you a kind of brief overview of what I've talked about, because I wanted this to be a kind of behind the scenes look at my new book. Then the temperature plummets as we increase the happy chemicals in our brain with the cold, all the different ways in which cold can help you. Then we switch on our brain. We explore radical ways to harness our brainwaves, use neurofeedback, access deeper states, unleash our potential. We look at fuel. And one of the things that I'm really interested in is, obviously, you know this from listening to the podcast, but intermittent fasting. And I wanted to bring that to a much wider audience. So we looked at fuel timings, fuel rules, and fuel boosters, which is supplements. All my favorite energizing supplements are in there. We then devote a whole section to that most noble of causes, which is managing our hangovers in alcohol, responsibly, obviously. If you want more energy, we need to tackle our meh on the home front. So we look at a kind of non-toxic, low EMF, supernatural, clutter-free home. Then we look at sleep. You can't have energy without rest. We learn how to increase melatonin and REM sleep, avoid blue light in the evening, get a longer, deeper rest, and so on. And once you've explored hundreds of methods in this book, then the magic happens in the metrics chapter. That is where I bring together everything I've learned in order to ensure I've chosen the methods that work best. I collect stats on HRV, sleep, diet, health, even DNA to create a unique energy template which will serve us well into the future. So it's been so fun putting it together. That's really what the book is about. Give you a little taste of it then. And then, obviously bear in mind, if you wanted to order the book, that would be fantastic. If you wanted to give me any feedback at any point, that would also be fantastic. And so the first chapter is about nature. It's all about soaking up the energizing power of the natural world. And you'll get a little feel of the kind of things that we look at in the book from this first chapter. Being in nature can help us with anxiety, depression, anger and fatigue, and I quote loads of studies on this in the book. There's scientific references throughout. The health benefits include a reduction in blood pressure, heart rate and stress. Potential preventative effects on cancer as well. It makes us feel better, and the studies are there to prove it. And as a listener to Zestology, you know this. So why don't we gravitate towards nature more often? Is it perhaps because we want to feel the pull of nature, but we don't always have time to go to the forest? We want to love the great outdoors, but we don't want to give up our screens. And we want to get closer to the natural world, but we still want to pick up our favourite fancy latte from our local coffee shop on the way, served just the way we like it. So in the book, what I say is to embrace our natural state, the key is to embrace it in a decidedly unnatural world. We look at getting a little bit less domesticated in the book, reconnecting with our wild natural side without having to go camping in the woods for 5 days. So we start by looking at forest bathing, and I wanted to read you a little bit about what I wrote on forest bathing, give you a little flavour for the book. So this is forest bathing. Everything that makes life worth living comes through the senses. As I write this, I'm listening to Gustav Mahler's Symphony No. 5 in C-sharp minor. The great man first made his name as a conductor, and as he matured, then became the great composer. Much of his creative work was written in the woods in southern Austria at a tiny little composing cottage. His routine was extremely strict. He would wake early and immediately take off to his stone hut in the forest. This was a tiny little dwelling under a canopy of trees. His mornings would consist of woodland solitude. The dappled sunlight would filter through the open door as he ate his modest breakfast alone on a bench. After his morning's music making was over, he would take multiple dips in the local lake. Then he would dry off in the sun and dip in once again. There would be a light lunch, and then long, invigorating walks in the afternoon. You might say Mahler used forest bathing for inspiration. This is now a very in term for getting outside, but has been acknowledged for many years and by many cultures for its rejuvenating power. The Japanese call it Shinrin-yoku. This translates as spending time in a forest and soaking up the sights, sounds and smells of the great outdoors to revive body and soul. That's all. Just doing this is proven to lift your mood. Forest bathing does admittedly sound a bit pretentious, but here's the thing, it doesn't actually have to be done in a forest. Consider the word forest to be a metaphor. Go anywhere that isn't indoors. Soak up the sights, sounds and smells of nature in your local park. Hug a tree on your street. Bathe in the back garden. The science shows you'll feel less meh. Actually, Mahler was at times a bit of a grumpy so-and-so. Apparently he couldn't bear to see anyone before he started work, and his wife was under orders to bribe the neighbours with opera tickets to stop their dogs barking and disturbing poor Gustav. But he loved the forest, and his great body of work is power to their inspiration. The challenging bit is being present in nature. It's soaking it up. That's where the meditative side of neuro-linguistic programming can help. NLP is based on how we use our senses to gather information and experience the world. Often we favour one sense and we miss much of what is going on. And then I go on to talk about an NLP technique that I've adapted for the book. So that's the start of the nature chapter, and we start by kind of establishing why it's so important to be outside and why it's so important to kind of get back in touch with nature. Then I talk about the emerging research that shows that if you live in a city, you might live longer, and the key planks of longevity that are being revealed by surprising research. Then we talk about some of the techniques to access nature which aren't necessarily so immediately obvious as getting outside for a bit of forest bathing or hugging a tree. Getting grounded. All the different grounding suggestions. How to reconnect with your natural circadian rhythm, key to energizing during the day. Obviously, the simplest thing to do that is with simple daylight. But what if it's the middle of winter and it's raining outside and it's getting dark at 4 o'clock in the evening? Techniques for that. We look at infrared light. We look at primal footwear. We look at, I must tell you about this bit, the bathroom accessory that takes you back to nature. It will come as no surprise to you, listening to Zestology, that our cave women and men ancestors did not have lovely porcelain toilets. Squatting, not sitting, was the order of the day for millions of years. So it's a squatting accessory. And we look at some supplements for helping you kind of reconnect with your natural self as well. So in this chapter, this first chapter, we look at going forest bathing, switching on your senses and feeling more alive. We look at getting good light, watching the sunrise, ditching your shades, using infrared light when nature isn't playing ball. We look at going primal, reconnecting with grounding, barefoot shoes, squatty potties, and loads more. And remember, all the way throughout, there's some fascinating references and studies that I've put in as well. And hopefully that gives you a little flavour of what the first chapter is all about. And my writing style, you might know, it's probably fairly similar to the way that I do this podcast as well. This is a behind the scenes look at this book and the kind of making of it. And I have to say, it's quite a painful process writing a book. But, if there was one time to write it, it was while we were all locked down for the last year. And in some ways, I've been very lucky because I've been at Sky, where I work kind of during the day, 3 times a week. I've been there a bit less recently. They've had less need for our services and our shifts have been shorter there because they don't want too many people in the office at once, which has given me a little bit more time to sit in the shed here at home and write this book. So after nature, we get into exercise. I start off by looking at low-level exercise to boost your mood and productivity. And then working from home workouts to change your brain with exercise. AI exercise bikes, AI strength training, VR workouts, exercise and breath and energizing breath work. Then we move on to cold and we look at cold showers, cryotherapy, the cold tank, wild swimming, coping with cold, amazing NLP technique that I use for coping with cold. So if you're someone who, you know the whole Wim Hof thing is good, but you struggle because you just don't like getting cold, I'm like that as well. And this cold technique definitely helps. And I really have enjoyed meshing the NLP techniques into the biohacking techniques. That's been one of the kind of fairly painful aspects of what I've done writing this book, because obviously the biohacking stuff, I do it all the time. But adapting all the NLP stuff that I first started learning back in 2004, so 17 years ago, adapting that for this is quite hard. Then the chapter about the mind, we look at decluttering the mind, escaping the screens, reading smarter. Then we've got things like float tanks and binaural beats, meditation and EFT and neurofeedback. Obviously, I've already said in the fuel chapter, we look at intermittent fasting, but we also look at stuff like optimizing coffee, and kind of upgrading our morning vitality, and then avoiding spikes and crashes. And then there's loads of supplements, all my favourite supplements, and that's, I think, a helpful chapter for people in terms of energy. In the alcohol section, clean wine and wine tech, which is definitely a thing, the magic wand, the world's cleanest vodka, activated charcoal, which you might already take, DAO supplements, DAO supplements, 4 pills in one, all in the name of a hangover. Have you ever tried that before? And DHM, have you tried that as well? The Japanese raisin tree. It'll help with your hangover. That's in the book too. And then the home stuff is really fun. We look at water filters, cleaner air, standing desks, pressure cookers, bathroom cabinet upgrades, loads of stuff on avoiding EMFs. Is that a phone in your pocket, or are you just happy to see me? A little brief mention for the infrared sauna, and lots of other stuff in that chapter as well. And then sleep, switching off at night, the colour amber, your sleep sanctuary, and designing the ideal bedroom. And then we look at sleep and travel as well. And then I'm one of the things that I think really marks this book out, and I've had a load of advanced readers who've come from my newsletter actually, and they've said, I think one of the things that makes this different from the other biohacking books is where the magic comes together is when you start to track this stuff and collect metrics. Because if you can start to create your own personal energy template for what works, then you really start to boost your energy. So what metrics to collect? And I go through all the different ways of collecting metrics. I've also recorded a special video that people can watch, and there's a link in the book, which means that you can just follow my process for how you collect metrics on a daily basis, and then all the different ways that you can analyze those metrics as well. At the back of the book, there's a meh directory, which features all the products, services, books, and practices that I love. Quite pleased with that bit. That wasn't my idea at all, but I had an amazing editor called Lindsay in America, and she was like, look, you've got all these hyperlinks all the way through the book. It's going to just look dreadful when you print the book. Just get rid of them and put them all in the med directory at the back. So that's at the back of the book as well. That's the book. You know what? I'm really pleased and proud to have it out. I would love you to read it. Let me know what you think. It's available in Kindle or paperback. It's not very expensive, and it's definitely a labour of love. And I think it brings together everything that I've spoken about on Zestology over the last few years. 10 years since I wrote a book, and it's taken a long time to bring out this fourth one, but it's been good fun. There's an emoji on the front cover as well, and generally speaking, I'm very pleased with how it's all gone. So let me know what you think. It's available now in all good bookstores. Actually, it's not really available in bookstores at the moment because I've gone the indie publishing route. It's available on Amazon and Apple and various places, but it is not available in bookstores as yet. But that may well come. The first three are, and obviously in different languages as well. But this is a bit different. So the book is called When Life is a Bit Meh, You Need Energy, Radical New Ways to Revitalise and Recharge Your Life. If you are interested in getting it, then head to Amazon. There's also links on my website, which is tonywrighton.com. And there's also extras on the site as well. Or, as we say on the site, mextras. So there's the video that I talked about, an up-to-date directory with loads of discounts in it as well. And a preview of the book as well. That is pretty much it. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoy it. As I say, it's definitely been a bit of a labour of love. I might well kind of go back over the book a little bit more. I'd quite like to go over the home chapter because I think that's the kind of thing that people love listening to this podcast. What water filter I use, what air filter, what standing desk, pressure cooker, bathroom cabinet upgrade, the things I use to mitigate EMFs, and there are a lot of them as well, dealing with the tech toxins in your home. And I do have some solutions in the book that are very, very cheap. There's one that's $7, I know that, and I think there might be one that's $1.89. So kind of both of those less than a tenner. They're in the book as well. So I might come back to that and record another podcast in the next month. Give me a chance to plug it a little bit more. I'm not going to be plugging it too much on this podcast, to be honest, because the target audience is firstly people who follow me, like you, listening to this podcast now. But secondly, a lot more people on Amazon who are into health and vitality, maybe have a passing interest in biohacking or NLP, and are interested in kind of furthering their health and wellness journey a little bit. So taking it to a whole new audience as well. I mean, trust me, it's very in-depth. You know, there's at least 100 scientific studies quoted in the book with links. And obviously, as you know from this podcast, I don't do things by halves. But it's definitely, I'm aiming for a wide audience. You know, I want to get on the bestseller list, and I would really love you to help me with that. So if you do buy the book, thank you so much. Do let me know. And thanks for helping me kind of get it on that list. And I think the other thing is we should have a party. We should have a launch party. At the moment, we've all been locked down for the last 9 months. I'll have to organise a Zoom launch party where we can, I don't know, get a glass of biodynamic wine and hang out with each other for half an hour. I'll have to sort that out. Right, that is it. That is enough of me whittering on this podcast. Plenty more exciting stuff to come very soon. As I say, if you want those extras, then head to tonywrighton.com. You'll get the extras, you'll get the video, the directory, the guide on how to collect excellent metrics, and a little bit more on the book as well. If you head to the homepage, you can see the front cover and how that looks with the emoji, which is great. And as always, thanks for your support. This is turning into an Oscar-winning speech, isn't it? So that is it from me. And I will see you again and speak to you again next week on Zestology. See you then.